Hello again, watch friends. Welcome back. Before I talk about the Seiko World Time, the 6217-7000, I'd like to take a moment to thank the many viewers and subscribers to my channel. To date, I have about 40,000 plus views of my 40 some odd videos and over 150 subscribers. This means a lot to me since, as you know, I don't make these videos to make money. I do it because I'm passionate about watches and a few other things, and I like to share what I know and my personal view on things. So thank you again. Also, a brief preamble. Several folks have asked why I don't review this particular watch or that one or another one. Sometimes these watches are not the best of their ilk, and perhaps maybe even are mediocre. Many years ago, for a period of about 15 years, I wrote for various computer magazines. This was in the early days of quote-unquote home computers and laptop computers. Anyway, I did this as an avocation rather than a vocation, much like the videos I do on my YouTube channel today. Early on, I once asked my then editor why we didn't review particular laptops or write negative reviews in the magazine. His answer has stayed with me some 25 years later and is the same answer I have today when I am asked a similar question. There is just so much good stuff that we have little time to focus on the less interesting or mediocre products. In addition, the majority of my videos are of watches and other things I own and collect. So by definition, I think they are good. Otherwise, I would not have them. Now, on to the Seiko. The 1964 Seiko 6217-7000 World Time is an interesting watch. It's definitely not a GMT, more on that later, and not even a traditional second time zone watch. More on that too, shortly. The 6217-7000 was a way for Seiko to commemorate the 1964 Olympic Games held in Tokyo that year. The Seiko Watch Company was the official timekeeper of the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, and they saw it fitting that they introduce a watch in conjunction with the Games. Further, with the Olympics attracting a global attendance, Seiko's World Time watch was a smart marketing move. The World Time was introduced along with the 571X series of one-button chronographs, but was differentiated from the regular models by an Olympic flame embossed on the caseback. The World Time is powered by a 6217 caliber, the same 17 joule, 18,000 beats per hour automatic that powered the legendary 62 Moss diver, but with an added GMT hand. And GMT I put in quotation marks. The 6217 movement was actually a development of the 603 caliber, which was first appeared in 1960, and the 62XX series of movements powered everything from the World Time to the Grand Seikos of the day. There are two versions of the watch, white and a more rare, at least now, black. This example is from November of '64 and has a silver white linen dial, which is bordered by split bicolor 24-hour track and framed by a matte silver rotating Cities of the World inner bezel with a sleek red trim. 24 time zones represented by cities throughout the world are depicted on the inner bezel, which is accompanied by a day-night indicator bezel and distinctive auto-setting GMT hand. This complication is similar to the Rolex GMT introduced in 1954, where the fourth hand is connected to the hour hand. The case is classically shaped, cushion type, and serves as merely a frame for the dial, aside from neatly proportioned lugs. The case back etching has faded on my particular watch, with its 53 years of wear, and only a slight outline remains of the Olympic torch, as most often happens due to the method of embossing that Seiko utilized at the time. Back in the early 60s, Seiko were embossing rather than stamping their casebacks. So that's why the embossed part of the caseback would wear away if the watch was worn extensively. The Olympic flame motif can still barely be seen, though, if you look close enough. Apparently, the Olympic torch was included on the 6217-7000 caseback until about October of 1964. After that, the Seiko Dolphin appeared on the caseback. Now, some specs. The watch is 38 millimeter in diameter. It's a stainless steel case with a snap-on caseback. Lug width is 18 millimeters, and originally it had a high-domed acrylic glass crystal. 43 millimeter lug-to-lug distance and a thickness of 11.5 millimeters. The inner bezel is turned by the crown, which is at 4 o'clock, like a diver's watch. However, the world time is not a diver. It's rated to only 30 meters. Even if the watch were brand new, including a fully functioning gasket, I'd be hesitant to get this watch anywhere close to water. No lume at all, chromed hands, and gold colored GMT arrow hand on the watch. So in order to use the world time function, some effort is required on the part of the wearer. The watch allows you to determine the time in any one of 24 time zones around the globe with the use of its rotatable inner bezel. Line up a city that's in your current time zone with the 24-hour hand, and you can reference the other time zones using the 24-hour scale as you move the bezel. Actually, once done, any time can be observed. The only drawback is that you must follow this procedure each time you want to determine the time in other time zones. So let me demonstrate. So, as you can see, the cities of the world are shown on the perimeter of the dial. So the way this works is pretty straightforward. What you do is you rotate the bezel, and again it's this in the closed position. You can see how the dial is rotating now. So you take the city that you're in this case, since I live in New Jersey, it's Eastern time, so you line up the city with the red arrow hand, and then what you do is you use the dial sort of like a calculator, where you can see that New York right here is lined up with the GMT hand. So if I want to see what time it is, let's say in Paris, I look up here, there's Paris. Looks like Paris and Rome are in the same time zone. And if I follow this little red hash mark by Paris, it looks like it's between 2100 and 22 hours. So 22 would be 10 o'clock at night, 21 would be 9 o'clock. So it's roughly about 9:30 at night in Paris, and if it's 3:30 here, you can see it's roughly about 6 hours ahead. So you simply match the local time zone with the GMT hand, follow the track around, and look on the inside track to see the time in the other zone. Notice that the 21 or 21 and a half is black, which means it's nighttime, and that's another indication. So the top range is black, bottom range is blue. If I wanted to see what time it was in Los Angeles, again, I'm pointing New York at the red GMT hand. I follow it back to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles, it looks like it's about 12:30, which makes sense because West Coast time in the U.S. is 3 hours behind East Coast time. So that's basically it. That's how you use the Seiko World Time Watch to determine another time zone. As you can see, this is different from a true GMT. For example, my Grand Seiko SBGM 021 is a GMT with a GMT hand that can be set independently of the local hour hand, the local time that the hour hand is set to. It works like this. I'd like to explain how to use the GMT function on this watch, or other watches that have works in a similar way. So if you look at the GMT hand, by the way, that is a blued, you can see there the GMT hand now pointing to 1800. So let's say it's 10 o'clock where I am in New Jersey, which is where I am. So I pull the crown out, I move the entire hands to have the GMT point to 20, which is 10 o'clock in 24-hour time, of course. And then let's say I am going to Paris. I'm on a flight tonight, going to arrive tomorrow. I think Paris is, Paris, France, that is, not Paris, Texas. Paris is about 6 hours ahead of the East Coast of the United States. It's either 6 or 5 hours ahead. I get confused because of daylight saving, so let's say it's 6. So then I would move the crown out to the first position and then just rotate the hour hand to, so it's really 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, so it'll be 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to rotate the hand to 4 o'clock. Notice when I rotate the hour hand, the minute hand and the seconds do not stop. So it's not going to interrupt the accuracy of your previous setting. I push the crown back in. So now the way to read this is the traditional hour minute hands is local time when I'm in Paris. It's 4 o'clock in the morning there. But I can also see that the second time zone is pointing to 20, so it's 10 o'clock. So that's one way to use this watch. The other way is to set the GMT hand to your new time and use the hour hand for your local time. But to me, I think that's a little bit confusing. It's much easier just to glance at the watch, see what time it is. It's 4 o'clock in the morning in Paris, and because of the 24-hour dial, inner dial there, you know whether it's AM or PM, and you know it's 10 p.m. on the East Coast. One way to identify an early 6217 world time is the black GMT hand. Later versions have a red GMT hand, like my watch. The lack of lume on the hour and minute hands, and a large fluted crown. Notice too the sparse warding down at the 6 o'clock area, only made in Japan. This is another clue that this is an early example. Mine is slightly later, saying simply Japan at 6 o'clock at the bottom of the dial. Another clue to the early example, Seiko 6217-7000 World Time watches is the condition of the caseback. The 6217-7000 World Time had a snap-on caseback, and the earliest examples had the caseback text etched on rather than stamped. And as mentioned before, as a result of this etching, the early examples have casebacks that are worn smooth. My example is worn pretty smooth. Seiko apparently only produced the 6217-7000 World Time watch in the year 1964. Between the months of March and December, making these a very limited production. In late 1966, Seiko then created the 6217-7010, which was similar in nearly every way to the 7000, except for the dial text at the 6 o'clock area, the loomed hour and minute hands, and the loom plots at every hour marker on the dial. In addition, Seiko also changed the crown on the 7010. As I mentioned before, the dial has a fine linen pattern that may require a loupe to see and fully appreciate. I like this kind of subtle attribute of a watch. It reminds me of my JLC, Jaeger LeCoultre, Master Control, that has what appears to be a silvery white dial, but upon closer inspection, and when viewed with a loupe, can be seen to have a very fine texture. Hands are a sword style. The previous version had baton-style hands. The red 24-hour hand indicates, in 24-hour time, your time zone. One sign of usability of this watch is the easy-to-read names of the world time cities. Since the watch is a world timer, being able to see and read the city names is crucial to the functioning of the watch. Setting the watch. The inner rotating ring with city names is rotated by the crown in the closed or normal position. The time zone bezel is easily rotated even with the watch on the wrist. Pulling the crown out to the first detent allows setting of the quick date, but in forward direction only. And pulling the crown out to the second detent allows setting of the hands. Although the movement is an automatic, there is no ability to manually wind the watch. In conclusion, while the world time is not a GMT watch, it is useful, especially if you don't mind doing a little work. It has an overall nice aesthetic and is an interesting piece. This particular watch is in great shape, except for the ghostly torch on the caseback, and is fun to wear. In fact, I've been wearing the world time now for almost 2 weeks straight. I just really enjoy looking at this watch and wearing it. And fortunately, it's an authentic, not a Seiko. My 6217-7000 is all original, except for the crystal, which has been replaced. And as it turns out, as you have seen, will be replaced again, because sometime in the last 2 weeks, I cracked the crystal. Things happen. So there it is, the Seiko World Time 6217-7000. As I said in the introduction, an interesting watch and one with a remarkable story. In Seiko's advertising campaign in 1964, they said, "Know the time everywhere on Earth, instantly." Well, that's still true today, albeit maybe not quite instantly. In any case, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.